Okay, welcome everyone to Communication by Design's Teaching from Home webinar. I'm Pete Grostic. Glad to have you all with us this morning. And I'd like to start just with some housekeeping. We might have a few more people joining us. You'll notice that you entered and you're muted. And, there's 32 people in right now. Might have a few more. That's just so we can kind of get through the content and make sure we cover everything. But I have a colleague with me, Eric Cliff, who will be manning the chat room. So if you have questions, any issues, any problems, please feel free to open that chat. If you're on a computer, that should be at the bottom of your screen. If you're on a mobile device, you might see it toward the top. And you can message to everyone. If you have a question, that might be a good thing to do, or you could even just send Eric a private message with a particular question. Also, we're all, or many of us at least, are at home right now on our home internet connections, and so it might be a good idea to actually stop your video as well during the webinar, just to make sure we don't have any sort of performance issues and we don't get any lag. With all the videos running, each of our computers will be trying to collect that video, and that can be a bit of a bandwidth hog. So anyway, I encourage you to ask questions in that chat window. And Eric also has a direct line of communication to me. So if there's a question that he feels is good for the whole group to hear, he'll let me know, and we can kind of change course midstream, and I can address that question. Okay? We have kind of up to an hour reserved. The content certainly won't take that long, but we wanted to reserve some time to answer some of those questions. And so we may not take that whole hour, but we're reserving until 10 o'clock. And we are recording this as well. And that'll be posted on our website, which I'll draw your attention to shortly here. It was also sent in the email. So you don't need to take notes, certainly, if there's anything that strikes your fancy, but we know note-taking can be a good way to remember things too. So that's completely up to you. Well, I think I may have bought enough time here so that we can get going. Anybody who isn't here probably will join us when they can. So I want to start with our intention for this webinar. We know that districts either are putting together or have put together these remote learning plans. There's going to be lots of nuance in those plans, right, specific to your district and to your schools. But we know that we have to provide some remote learning opportunities for our students. So we wanted to lay out some general principles that would kind of guide you as you're putting some of that together. We think there are good and better ways to do this remote learning. We want to kind of bring our thoughts to you. And of course, district school level decisions, they might ask you to use certain programs, to not use other programs, to focus on certain areas. We understand that. So the very, very specific questions to your district, your school, your grade level, or your classroom, again, can be posed in the chat. But we also will have our virtual coach running Monday through Friday through the end of May. We'd love to support you in that way as well with any of those really specific questions that you might have. Okay? It's our job to answer those questions, so please don't feel remorse in asking them. Challenge us. We might not have the answer right now. Promise we'll get the best information that we can to you and as quickly as we can. Okay, so this resource, this bit.ly/teachhomehub that was sent to you in the invitation as well, that's going to house all of the links and programs that I'm going to go through today. It's going to be organized by our 5 principles, which I'm going to go through as well. It'll also have extra resources for you. Again, we think there's some good things to keep in mind from a content perspective and also from a schedule and routine perspective. All of that will be there. And at the end, I'll give you a short kind of overview of that site if you haven't been there yet. All right, before we get into the principles, we want to keep student motivation in mind And to do that, I want to bring you Paul Tuff's work in the book Helping Children Succeed. And he also wrote the book How Children Succeed. And these are things that are good to keep in mind during normal operations of schools and classrooms, but certainly are, I think, enhanced in this remote learning setting. These three components, autonomy, competence, and relatedness, are important for students to feel motivated to learn in your classroom. And, uh, and again, I think this will kind of ground us in these principles. You'll see kind of where these principles come from if we go through these real quick. So autonomy, we're talking about choice when we talk about autonomy, but I think the real essence here is we want our students to have a sense of agency and empowerment, okay? And that requires a few things from us as teachers. We need to make sure they have the confidence to persevere. We need to make sure they feel cared about from us so that they feel like they have that sort of agency. So when we talk about autonomy, we're not necessarily talking about choice in what they're doing, although that could be a component, but choices in how they do it. And that includes asking us questions, that includes collaborating with their classmates. We want them to feel that sense of agency and that sense of empowerment. I think that, unfortunately for many of us, this sense of kind of coercion and control we kind of fall into in the classroom. I know that I did. We use grades to motivate. We use tone of voice. We use proximity, all sorts of other methods that really are not available to us, at least not to the same degree anymore. And so we need to use other mechanisms. It's important to remember that teachers can affect these three components of autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Okay, so we can affect these. We can create an environment where these can rise to the top. So we want to think about how we give our students agency and empowerment. We also want our students to feel competent. So there's a couple components involved in that. One is we need to earn their respect. We need to be credible to them. We have to give them activities and tasks that they can be successful doing. And we can't assume that even our most successful students in school are now in a supportive, successful environment at home. And we don't know if their parents are working. We don't know, even if their parents are working, if there's some turmoil and some angst at home with trying to manage being a parent and also working from home. So we need to give students tasks that they can be successful at. We also need to give them sufficient challenge. And I think this speaks to the type of work that we should be asking our students to do. A march through the textbook might not be the best course of action right now. We might want to focus on those activities that produce engagement, enrichment, and fun. And then finally, relatedness. This is probably the most important thing to keep in mind, I think, in a remote learning setting. We want students to feel a sense of belonging to the school and a sense of connectedness to both their teachers and to each other. So the more opportunities we can give them to connect with us as teachers, but also with their classmates, will, I think, increase that sense of relatedness and keep them connected to their school and to their friends. A big part of school, of course, is that social aspect. And it's not just having friends, but also developing that social and emotional affect. So those kind of three components drive the principles we're about to go through. And here are what we think are the 5 key principles in a remote learning setting. So number one, first and foremost, connecting with students. We really feel like in this unprecedented situation, it's probably the most important thing you can do is to keep a regular connection with your student. And that doesn't just mean with them as students, but also to them as people. So how are they doing, not just academically, but emotionally and socially? So regular connection, depending on your caseload, maybe once a week, having a personal individual connection with each student. Connecting students with each other, lots of ways we can do that. We'll go through those in a little bit. Establishing those consistent routines. I know I've been bombarded with emails about the importance of routines in this kind of quarantine situation. We can't assume that parents and families are getting those same notes. And so it doesn't hurt to reiterate, it's important to keep good hygiene, good bedtimes, meal times, all of those things. We do think we should be focusing on engaging activities. Again, you might have power standards that you're asked to accomplish. That's great. You can do that in engaging, fun ways to keep them connected to school and interested in learning. And then finally, we do think less is more, not just from a time perspective, but also from different tools that you might be tempted to use. Less is more. You find a tool or two that's working for you, we think you should stick with it. Okay, so principle number one, connecting with students. There's lots of ways we can do this, right? And one way that I think a lot of schools have thought of, because it just kind of recreates the classroom, trying to have meetings with students over Zoom or Google Hangout, Google Meet, as it's called, WebEx, different tools like that. I think it's important right now to make a note about FERPA and COPA. So these are guidance for programs that interact with young people. So the Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, it's all about the transmission of educational records. And you've probably heard some FERPA concerns with Zoom. Want to talk about that a little bit. And COPA is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. And this is where any child under 13 needs parent permission to have their own kind of account that has personal identifiable information. And so there's concerns with some of these live video conferencing tools and their adherence to FERPA and COPA. So one note, I'm not here to push any particular tool. I want to give you the information that we have so you and your schools can make the best decisions. Your school might have already made a decision on these tools, and that's great, and you should totally go with that. But a note about FERPA is there is no certification program, right? So a claim that a tool is FERPA compliant or not FERPA compliant is really just their best guess based on the guidance of FERPA, which again is the transmission of educational records. So Google Meet is definitely widely known to be FERPA compliant. It's a great tool. It actually connects with Google Classroom now, or at least that's being rolled out. You may see that already in your Google Classroom accounts, or it may be coming soon, where you can just create a Google Meet invitation right within your classroom that shows up at the very top of the student screen and the teacher screen. It's a great tool. If you don't have Google Classroom running, that may not be the best tool for you. A tool like Zoom, you've probably heard Zoom bombing is a thing now that wasn't in my vocabulary a few weeks ago. But yeah, that's a concern where people are hacking into these Zoom calls. So they put in a waiting room feature, and you may have seen that if you're using Zoom as well, where students or anybody else are put into a waiting room until the host can admit them to the classroom. Again, Zoom claims that they're FERPA compliant. You want to do your due diligence on that. They claim that they won't sell any identifiable information, and when an account is deleted, that they'll delete that information after 30 days. With COPA, if you're asking students to connect with you via their own accounts, just have to be careful based on your acceptable use policies in your districts, your AUPs, that they have permission to create those accounts. Otherwise, my son just did a Zoom call with his kindergarten teacher, and I just made sure to connect with my account, okay? And with a lot of these video conferencing programs, you don't even really need an account. You can just join as a guest or a visitor. But I made sure to use my account for Zoom so that the information was mine and not my 6-year-old son's. So those are some things to kind of keep in mind if you're using these tools. Another great way to connect with your students is to use your messaging services through the learning management systems that you might already be using. Schoology, Seesaw, even things like Class Dojo, and certainly Remind have these messaging features. You can connect with individual students in this way and see how they're doing. Don't forget, if you have a social media account that you're using for professional purposes, it's another way you can connect with students and make sure they're doing okay. And then finally, email and phone calls. My second grader, wow, My second grader got a call from her teacher yesterday. It was 3 minutes long. It meant the world to her to get a call from Mrs. McClellan. And it doesn't take long. It's something you can do once a week, once every other week. And I can tell you, for my daughter at least, it was super impactful. Okay, another consideration with connection is to connect students with each other. Again, you can do this through a live video conferencing tool like Zoom or Google Meet. But there's also ways you can do this kind of asynchronously, and that could be through a digital discussion of some kind, could be the recording and sharing of videos through your learning management system or through Flipgrid, which we'll get into a little bit more later. Or it could just be shared documents, and this could be around academic work or otherwise. But we can't forget, connecting with students individually is important. Giving them a chance to connect with each other is going to be huge, and it's something they're really missing during these weeks at home. Okay, establishing consistent routines. If you don't have a learning management system, we'll get into some ways that you can still kind of house or organize some of these materials. But first and foremost, if you have Google Classroom or Schoology or Seesaw running or Canvas or something like that, we highly recommend you use that as kind of a one-stop shop for everything you're asking students to do. Again, you can connect out to Flipgrid, you can connect out to Google Meet and all these other programs you might want to use, but having a one-stop shop is really critical. We'd even go so far as to say, check with your grade level teams, your content area, your school even, or in the best cases, your district, to be consistent about those hubs. If I've got 4 children in my house at different buildings, and they're all asked to go to different places, Google Classroom here, a website here, a Facebook group here, it can get difficult to manage as a parent. So the more you can be consistent across grade level teams, content areas, and even schools, the better. But we encourage a learning management system to house really everything. Your daily messages, your tasks, your feedback, your videos, anything that you're going to give to students, we would encourage you to house there. If you don't have a learning management system, Flipgrid can be a great place to house some of those instructions you can give via a Flipgrid video, daily messages. That can be a consistent place that parents and families can go to. You could do something like a Facebook group that's open to you in your school, or even an email can be a good place so that at least they know where to go. I know my children's district, quite frankly, has been a little ad hoc up to this point. They're not a one-to-one district. And so, there's an online website, there's a Flipgrid group for my school, there's emails going out. It's been a little crazy to manage. It'd be nice if that was a little bit more consistent. We'll get into some organizations that we think could be helpful for you as far as schedule in just a moment. But want to talk about that 5 E's too. You might even want to be consistent about what you're asking students to do week to week or day to day even. So this 5 E's is going to be linked on our website again. The 5 E's stand for engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. Some sort of mechanism like that. So you can kind of use that to drive the content that you're pushing out to students, can be helpful so they always know exactly, okay, I've done my engage part, I'm moving on to my explore part. Good friend of mine and author Dave Stewart, who I believe might be on the call, actually, he uses read something, write something, say something. Another great kind of structure for content that you're pushing out to students that they can get used to and that can be consistent and comfortable to them. So one possible routine, and this is with a secondary teacher in mind, 1 lesson per week, might be something like this. And again, you'll find these on our website, is Monday's all about connection. So you might host a video chat, you might send a weekly check-in survey. There's some great Google form templates that we have on our website for these daily or weekly check-ins via a Google form, which is a nice way to check in with students, see how they're doing, and collect that information in one place. Tuesday might be about now your academic content. This is when you might send out your instructional video or your tasks for the week. Wednesday, you might want to give them an opportunity to collaborate. And then you want students to be able to share something out. That might be on Thursday. And Friday might be kind of an independent day. You might have office hours throughout the week or pick a particular day. But we really encourage you to kind of leverage the asynchronous nature that we have at our disposal right now. Recreating the classroom online, we think, is going to be a bit of a fool's errand. You know, having students sit in front of a screen for 6 hours isn't really something that's going to get us very far. I don't think it'll get us a lot of resentment, most likely, but not very far in other ways. So you know, you don't have to be in front of your students all the time. Get them that information, give them a few days to do it and get back to you so that they can create their own schedule that works for them. Again, we don't know what those schedules are like at home. We should ask and we should find out, but they're going to be all over the place. So having that asynchronous piece to it where we're only going to meet maybe once or twice together at one time, everything else is kind of on your own with the option for office hours could be good. Here's an elementary example where you're kind of hitting one content area per day. This is an idea. Again, you might want to give them reading, math, and science on a Monday and say, here's the things I want you to complete by Friday. You know, that could be a good way to structure it, or anything in between. But again, keeping it consistent, we think, will be helpful, and also keeping the parents in mind. They've got other students in their house, likely. The students have other classes. And so knowing, even if it's a lot or a little, doesn't matter, knowing what you're expecting is probably the most important thing. Principle number 4, focusing on engaging activities. So first and foremost, providing your direct instruction with short videos. Again, I think having a whole class Google Meet or Zoom call to give out your instructions might not be the most efficient way to do it. Writing out instructions or recording a short video could be helpful. Screencastify, Loom, Screencast-O-Matic, these are great programs to create a short screencast. If you haven't used them before and you're a little anxious about it, again, please lean on us to help you work through that. We're happy to help you. We're happy to give you examples. If you're used to Flipgrid, that could be a great place to make and house your instructional videos for students day to day or week to week. Edpuzzle is a tool that will create videos that you can put notes and questions in throughout. So if there's a video that you've made or that you've found online that you really like, you can put in comprehension questions throughout the video and then collect that information back from students, again, asynchronously, so that they can do it on their own and you can see how that's going for them. That can be another way to get information out to students. Here's some ideas. Again, just a few. There's tons more on our website. So it's just to kind of wet your whistle a little bit on what we mean by engaging activities, okay? I was a former secondary math teacher. If there's any math teachers on the call right now, I think this is a moment in time where we could kind of finally rethink what math instruction is all about. I would say, I'm stepping on a soapbox here very quickly, so if you'll indulge me, but I would say to continue to make math mostly about just computation, we're not going to be able to tell if they're plugging in these problems we're giving them into Google, okay, from home. You know, we can try to lock that down in our classroom, but another alternative to just having students compute is to have them apply, right? And so taking those concepts that we know they can compute using the help of a device or a calculator, and instead having them apply toward problems. So emergent math is a warehouse of problem-based learning math problems for grades 3 through 11. It's a great place to go for some of those application-based problems that, they can take the formulas and the computations and actually apply them towards something. This intensity of chocolate milk, you'll see in the center of the screen, there's a little snippet of a poster. These are 6th and 7th grade level poster problems that you can assign to students where they're using things around the house. Like this was creating chocolate milk. But again, they're applying the concept of ratios and proportional reasoning in this poster problem instead of just computing those. And then this would you rather math is these super simple problems like you see on the screen. Would you rather have Cheez-Its to cover a rectangle with a length of 9, perimeter 22, or a length of 5, perimeter 20? So taking, again, household things and creating this would you rather problem that they'll have to, sure, compute, but they'll have to actually think through it as well and apply their skill towards something that might be a little bit more fun and interesting to them. For science and social studies, these STEM projects, that link that you see in the middle there, this comes from Leading PBL. These are K-12 project-based learning units for science and social studies. And again, if you can create a 2 or 3 week kind of umbrella structure for a project-based learning unit that deals with science or social studies, I think that could be a nice way to engage students in a real problem that they might have in and around their classroom. Maybe it's about coronavirus, COVID-19. Back to math real quick. If exponential functions is one of your power standards, you have so much rich material right now with the case graphs that you can utilize. So again, utilizing the things that are happening to them right now that they're obviously going to be thinking about could be a way to make these activities engaging and sufficiently complex for them. Mrs. O's house activities, a ton of puzzles and activities that are housed there, more than I can even talk about. Crossword puzzles and all sorts of different things that you can use for students. As far as cross-curricular, there's 50 ideas for PBL, comes from teachthought.com. And these are, again, project-based learning ideas that go across curriculum. So for elementary, that is maybe a little bit easier, but even for secondary, reaching out to a colleague and kind of co-creating something could be a nice way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone and have something fun for students to do. And then high-tech high student projects, despite the name high-tech high, these are K-12 student project ideas that it's just a great database. High-tech high is out of San Diego, and they have K-12 network across the country now, and they're releasing a lot of those student projects. Finally, some programs that you can use to encourage collaboration and conversation include, again, your learning management systems, collaborating through your shared documents. Many of your districts are G Suite, so you use the Google products. Encourage them to comment on those documents, those shared documents, and so this can be engaging, can also create that connection and belonging that we're looking for. Seesaw is a great tool if you're using it to have students share videos back and forth. Again, this could be kind of a show and tell style. What's going on in your house? What are you up to? How are you doing? And then, of course, Flipgrid's a great place to house those types of things too in one location. Some of our families may not have devices at home. They often will have a smartphone, and Seesaw and Flipgrid are great for smartphone use as well. Don't forget, less is more. Most important content, certainly, going deeper as opposed to covering content. Again, I think the idea of kind of marching through the content as we normally would, it's going to set some of our students back when we don't really need to. We're not going to be able to tell exactly what they've got over these next 6 weeks, and we're going to have to cover it again in the fall. We might as well try to make sure as students are motivated to learn with whatever we're assigning to them, and make sure they're kind of all on the same page when they come back in the fall. So be creative, and I just want to reiterate what I said at the beginning. Tools that you've been using, see how you might continue to utilize them. Try not to incorporate too many new things that could cause some unneeded stress and anxiety for you and your students. I've hit you with a lot of tools. Some of those could be new. Again, I'd encourage you to look at what had you been using in your classroom and try to continue to use that instead of incorporating too many new things for your students. All right, that's the end of kind of our content. Uh, you can get more support from us. There's my colleagues. Our team of coaches are available again Monday through Friday through our virtual coaching site, which you can get to at cbdconsulting.com/virtual coach. We also have our website at bit.ly/teachhomehub. You can always email us at coach@cbdconsulting.com or call and text us at that Google Voice number. I will pause now to see if Eric has any larger questions for me and then give you a tour of our website. Okay, no specific questions. All right, awesome. So if you want to hang with us here, I'll give you a quick tour of our website. If you need to move on with your day, I understand too. Okay, so this is the Teaching from Home website. You'll see it's divided into pages around each of those 5 principles that we just went over. There's also a all links and resources button here. And the webinars we've done so far, this is ours that we're doing right now. The video recordings will be posted here. So if you want to rewatch anything, you just miss hearing my voice, that would be where you click. Sorry about that. So let's look at one of these pages. You'll see a very similar kind of setup to what you saw in the slides. This is the Connect Students with Each Other. It will give you some examples. Now these links will send you to how to do the thing we're suggesting, not just, it doesn't just send you to zoom.com, but how you can actually set that up. This new integration with Google Classroom, this Google Meet integration I talked about, you can see an article about that right here. Again, your Google Classrooms might not have that yet, but that's being rolled out. Google always rolls that out in waves so that if there are issues, technical issues, they can solve those before they send it out to everybody. But that's coming very, very soon. And all the pages are kind of set up that way. Focus on engaging activities. You'll see some of the same things that we talked about in the slides. But what I want to draw your attention to is a couple things. At the bottom of each page, you'll see a Connect with Coach. So this will send you to our virtual coaching option as well. And also this links and resources will have lots more. So don't go to this page if you are concerned you might be overwhelmed by a bunch of different tools. We've got 4 different databases of tools, including education companies that are offering free resources or free trials or extended free trials of resources. If I click on this one, what you'll see is a crazy long spreadsheet, alphabetized, with all of the different offerings. And again, this can be overwhelming, but if you're looking for something specific, this could be a place to go to see if you can get it, you know, for free now, where it normally would have costed you some sort of subscription cost. Okay, so this is hopefully helpful to you. Online learning sites by grade band. My colleague Eric put this one together. This is a great Google Doc that has some nice online learning sites for K-5 and for 6-12. So take a look. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. Please reach out to us if there's anything else we can do for you. And at this time, Eric and I will just kind of hang out for a little bit. If you have questions, you can pose those in the chat, either to the whole chat or specifically to Eric and I. But we wish you well. Please stay safe, stay healthy. We sincerely hope you and your families are doing well managing all of this, and just know that we're here to help you along the way. Thanks, everybody.